had the pleasure of listening to Lou Zweier. Lou has been working with Edwin for about 8 years. He is a current member of the Empathy Center Board of Directors and is a former executive of the California State University System. Over to you, Lou. Thank you.
Thanks very much. So fun to go down the memory lane with Edwin of the origin of the Empathy Circle, and then listening to Rutsch. I haven't seen Rutsch in a really long time, so feeling a lot of joy right now. So I'm gonna, so I started doing Empathy Circle work with Edwin, I think in 2016, something like that. So I've been doing this a long time, and I also have a background in nonviolent communication and restorative circles, which Edwin mentioned both of those. And for the last 3+ years, I've been doing a public listening project in my hometown, which is Petaluma, California, where we do, usually in 4-week blocks, we do empathy circles, and people are invited from the public to come. We've had over 200 people, different people participate over time. And much like Russia, we see people coming, repeatedly. And people really learning a lot from that experience. So what I'm going to share today, so when I was asked to talk, or when I thought about what would I want to talk about, as more and more people have learned empathy circle practice and people are going off and doing different things with it, people are experimenting, like Rasha explained that she was experimenting with different, changing different parts of the structure, and that's fine. But because I've been doing this a long time, and what I've seen is that it's amazing that the simple structure of the empathy circle produces kind of a magical result. It's very simple, but amazing things happen in it. And so I wanted to share my thoughts about the bits of structure that make up the circle and why I think they're important. So as people experiment and try different things, they don't throw out something that is important. And that doesn't mean that things can't change. People should experiment. But I just wanted to share my learning about what I think is really important about the different pieces of structure. So I've made up a couple of, I just have 2 slides, which are really meant to just help guide the things I want to say. So the first attribute of the structure of empathy circle structure that I think is important is mutuality. And I think, one of the things about the empathy circle, I say this often when I introduce it, is one of the things it does is it interrupts our bad habits of communication. That's one of the advantages of the structure. And mutuality in relating, in talking and communicating is one of the things that if you kind of watch what happens between a pair of people, and more so even in a group of people, a small group of people, is mutuality does not happen naturally. What happens naturally is some people talk a lot, some people don't talk very much at all. And a lot of times 1 person or 2 people will dominate the conversation. And so mutuality is, I think, a really important attribute of the empathy circle. It ensures that everybody gets a chance to speak, and be heard for what's important to them, and including the facilitator. That the facilitator is also a participant. And so that kind of mutuality also flattens there's no hierarchy. It reduces the kind of hierarchy in the circle. So I think mutuality, the idea that everyone gets an equal chance to speak, I think that's really, really essential. And time turns, which is the second thing, that really helps support that. The fact that people are timed means a couple of things. It means, 1, that everybody gets a roughly equal time to speak. It means that speakers who tend to tell a lot of stories or tend to go on and on, they get limited in what they are saying, and they learn to get to the point more quickly over time. It means that if somebody is saying something that's very difficult for people to hear, either the idea that they're expressing or the way they are communicating is offensive, or it's very hard to hear, it means there's going to be a limit on how much time people have to listen to that. And that makes it, more tolerable. Knowing that there's a limit to how long this is going to go on makes it easier for people to tolerate listening to things that they disagree with or that they might be offended by. So time turns for that reason are really important. And it doesn't mean that I never, as a facilitator, I never vary the time. I mean, if somebody, if a reflector is taking a really long time to reflect a speaker, I might give the speaker a little bit more time because they're not really getting a lot of, they're not having much time to speak. Okay, the third point is speaking freely. So I think it's a really important attribute of the circle that the instructions are to the speaker are say whatever you want. When it's your turn to speak, say whatever you want. And, this comes out of a lot of experience of mine of trying to teach communication skills to people, both nonviolent communication and other communication models. And when you give people a lot of rules for speaking, they have trouble saying what's important to them. Often when someone has something in them that's really important to them to say, there's usually a big emotional component to it. And when I'm feeling a lot of emotion, I'm not thinking very clearly. I can't be really careful about how I'm expressing myself when I'm feeling strongly about something. And so I think a great attribute of the empathy circle is that and others have said this, it's a free space, speak however you want, say whatever it is you need to say, get it off your chest. And there's more focus on listening, not really trying to control the speaker, but trying to not control the listener, but that the power is in how we listen to what people are saying. What are we listening for? Maybe when I'm not listening for their judgments, I'm not listening for their bad language. I'm listening for, so why are they saying this? Why is it important to them? How are they feeling about what they're saying? And why is it important to them? I think that's a really important attribute of empathy circles. So then the next is reflection. So if you watch what happens in normal conversation between two people or in a small group, reflection rarely happens. And often in empathy circle, when people are being reflected, people will say at the end of an evening, I don't think I've ever been listened to like this before. And it's because reflecting what people are saying is not a habit that people have. And so reflection lets the speaker feel heard. That's one reason it's really important. Another is that it slows down the conversation. So in terms of talking about things that are difficult or where people have big differences, slowing down the conversation is one of the main things that helps people hear each other across differences. Another aspect of reflection is that it interrupts what happens in normal conversation, which is someone will say something and then someone will object to it or challenge it in some way, asking questions or saying, no, this is my experience or something like that. And so then the speaker doesn't feel received. So part of the importance of reflection is for the speaker to feel received. Part of the importance of reflection
Lou.
is to slow the conversation down. And another part is for people to understand that listening is about understanding the other person, that's actually the purpose of listening is to receive the other person. So I'm going to skip over silent listening and say that another important thing is that then the listener becomes the speaker. So because you've been doing the listening and you've been having to reflect, when you become the speaker, you're kind of empty. You haven't been sitting there thinking, oh, how am I going to contradict what they're saying? How am I going to respond to what they're saying? So there's a kind of emptiness that I think also changes the dynamic of the conversation.
And that's about time, Lou.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Well, it's fun sharing these insights with you. I hope they are a contribution. I hope they're helpful.